That feeling like a pair of eyes are watching you. The sense that someone is watching your every move. There's something or someone in the shadows. When a resident of North Pond came down the stairs, it was 7:30 a.m. in the morning. He stepped into the kitchen and he knew something was wrong. Not again. The back door was slightly ajar. He looked around and he saw that things in the kitchen had been moved. When he went to the fridge, he opened it and he saw that all the food was gone. He went into the living room knowing and dreading what he was going to find. He found muddy footprints on the carpet. The family dinner table had been disturbed. This has to stop, he thought. This cannot keep happening. We are living in constant fear, never knowing when it's going to happen again. Welcome to Extraordinary Stories Podcast. Hey, how are you? Are you well? Are you good? I am. Alright, so I'll get to the story in a second. Just a little thank you to say, well, two things, right? First of all, a thank you, and then second of all, a correction from the last episode because I made a terrible blunder, but we'll get to that. My thank you goes out to Anna A. Valgren, who sent me just the most beautiful package in the post containing all sorts of amazing, colourful, exciting things, including a feather boa, lots of sweets, some little unicorns. There were treats for Alfie, my dog. There were marbles. It was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. So thank you so much for that, Anna. I really appreciate it. All right, now, the mistake from the last episode. I made such a blunder. You might really not have noticed it, but then a lot of people who did notice it were like, what are you talking about? So, I was talking about the Swedish monster's mum, and I called her Eskilstuna, right? I said, I think that's how you say her name. No, turns out that's the name of the bloody town that they lived in. What an absolute idiot. That's not her name at all. That would be like me saying, and the mother's name was Glasgow. No, that's where she lives. That's not her name. I just got that a little bit confused in my Swedish research. But you know what, as a non-Swedish speaker, give me a break. But thank you anyway to those who pointed it out. Alright, okay, this story. This truly is an extraordinary story. It's part mystery, it's part crime, there's part human behaviour, there's a little bit of dilemma in it. It's just, when this came to my attention I thought, yes, I have to tell this one because this really is bizarre. Okay, are you ready? Okay, let's go. Alright, well, we are starting in Maine, USA. Now, I don't know much about Maine, other than I think it's kind of northeast. American listeners, you might have to help me out here. Northeast, I think Maine is. I mean, all I know of it is that fictional Cabot Cove, where Jessica Fletcher lives, is in Maine. I mean, that's really all I know about it, which, doesn't really stand for much. Anyway, we're in an area called North Pond. And the North Pond area, well, the people of that town are feeling uneasy. The residents are on edge. And in fact, they were always on edge. Okay, why? Well, I'll tell you. Or I'll let Catherine Butler, a long-term resident of North Pond, tell you. This is what Catherine has to say. It's been happening for years, for as long as I can remember. You come home from work and you dread coming into the house just in case he has been back. I was coming home from work some days at 5:30 and I was finding that my fridge was empty. My garage had been raided and my family's clothing was missing. This happened 8 times to my home. My neighbours, they live in the same fear that we will all have things taken from us. Catherine goes on to say, I put a sign on my door that said, please don't break in and take things. Leave a list of what you need and I will get it for you and I will leave it on the doorstep. But that note was ignored. Okay, what the hell is going on? What the hell? What is actually happening in North Pond? This is so peculiar. Well, in this area, there had been an ongoing spate of break-ins. Now, I'm going to stick to calling it break-ins, if that's okay, because I know that in different countries we all call it something different. I think Americans, you say burglarized. That doesn't really sit well with my my tongue. Because in really, well, I don't know, maybe other parts of the UK, but I definitely know that in Scotland you would say, I've been burgled. You wouldn't say, I've been burglarised. Or in most cases, you might not even say, I've been burgled. A lot of the time, you would say, I've been broken into. That's kind of, well, yeah, that's more sort of what it is. So I'm going to stick with break-in. Now, these break-ins, they were happening throughout the whole community. Not just one person here or there being targeted. This was like community-wide. Nobody's home was safe. No public building was safe. They were all having things stolen from them. And here is the real kick in the chops. This had been happening for over 20 years. 20 years of these break-ins and residents coming home to find that their house had things stolen from it, taken from it, or waking up in the morning to discover that clothing was missing, food was missing, coffee was missing, anything, things were just disappearing. 20 years, 20 odd years of this. So the people of North Pond in the sort of early 2000s, they have a meeting. They decide, right, we need to have a meeting and we need to just, try and see what we can do, because we're basically all just living in fear that our houses are now constantly under threat. At that meeting, there are 1,000 residents. And when the question is asked, raise your hand if your house has been a victim of a break-in. Over 700 people put their hands up. Now this just goes to show you how many houses are being targeted. Now, police, were they involved? Yes, of course they were. But they had been on the hunt for a long, long time. A very long time. To find the guilty party. But they'd had absolutely no luck. So, I mean, within that, I guess there's a few different things to kind of unpick. I mean, first of all, police are slightly wondering, right, is this some sort of organised crime? Is there a team of people who work together and they're targeting these homes? And they've been doing it over a very, very, very sustained period of time. The townspeople, well, they were going, why have police never caught who this is? Like, why is this so difficult to figure out who this is? Because it's been going on forever. So you must have some kind of clue. You must have something. But no, police will say no. And then, of course, there's the mythology, the kind of folklore that happens around every town and every city. I am pretty sure wherever you grew up, wherever that is in the world, there will be some kind of a story told in your town, in your city, in your village about some mysterious goings on or some weird things. In the place that I grew up, it was it was the pig woman. Yep, I remember being about 6 or 7 years old and being told, you have got to watch out because the pig woman will get you. I was like, who's the pig woman? What's that about? Well, this is how the story goes. Turns out the pig woman lived in the place that I lived, and she'd murdered her husband and her kids, and she was always on the lookout for new people to steal and kill. That was fucking terrifying when I was 6 years old. I was like, what? What are you talking about? I mean, don't get me wrong. Part of my sort of, 6-year-old true crime self was a bit like, I'd like to meet this pig woman. I'd like to meet her and talk to her. But yeah, it's weird because every town, every village, they have those things, don't they? Those little mythologies. And that is essentially what this has become. Although for the people who are being broken into, it's very, very real. If you're coming down in the morning to get ready to go to work, you open your fridge and all the food's gone, you go into the bathroom and your toothbrush is missing. That's a horrible place to be in. That's an absolute nightmare. Anyway, over the 20 years sustained period that this had happened, the locals had begun to sort of talk about how they felt that there was this presence, there was this figure that was making this all happen. And they had nicknames for this figure. So they called this person the Mountain Man, the main Loch Ness Monster. Shout out to Scotland there. Nice. The Stealthy Yeti was another name. Or simply the Hungry Man. So these were the stories that were sort of going around the town and that people were believing. In late 1999, a 15-year-old girl named Kimberly Brompton, she is walking home from one of her friend's houses in the North Pond area. As she's walking to her home, and it's only a 5-minute walk, she hears a noise to her left, and it's coming from within a set of trees. So Kimberly starts to walk just a little bit quicker, and then she hears the noise again. She says it sounds like it's like a branch snapping under someone's foot, or it's some rustling of the trees, or she can just know that it's like tree related, this noise. So she stops, she looks, and she sees a pair of eyes looking at her from the trees, staring right at her. She can't see any other features, just eyes. Kimberly does what I think we would all do. She runs as fast as fuck out of there. She gets home as quick as she can, and when she gets inside, she's hysterical. She tells her parents, someone was watching me, there was someone in the trees, I know there was someone there. And her parents are like, yep, okay, this is not the first report that this has ever happened in this town. Police are called. Police arrive. Again, for police, this isn't a new story. They go, yep, this is happening all the time. They check the area, but they can't find anything. Can't find a single thing. Can't find a person. Yeah, can't find anything. They ask her, was it an animal? Could it potentially have been an animal looking at you? And she says, no, it wasn't. This was a human staring at me. I know fine well this was a pair of human eyes. Because of course they're going, was it a sort of animal that was in the trees and she got herself a bit spooked walking home? And Kimberly will say, no, I didn't get myself spooked. I'm telling you what this was. Human eyes were looking at me. But in time, the incident just gets forgotten, as is how this kind of goes within the North Pond area. These things are reported continually to police, but all that they do is they just add to the mythology. They just add to the folklore of, oh my God, did you hear it? Oh my God, Kimberly saw someone looking at her from a set of trees last night. And all it does is it just keeps that sort of, there's someone in the town, there's something going on, there's someone watching us. It just keeps that going. So for the police, there are things to consider. Now, they are determined, absolutely determined, that they want to find who's behind all of these burglaries. Who's behind all the houses being broken into constantly? Why are residents living in a constant state of fear? But what they're also looking at is what's actually being taken, what's actually being stolen. Now, it doesn't matter if, your house is broken into and, I don't know, someone steals your kettle and your toaster, but leaves behind all your valuables. It's still a break-in. It's still someone entering your property when they shouldn't. And that's always going to leave you with a horrible and an uneasy feeling. That's not something you can just brush aside. But here is the thing. It wasn't valuables that were going missing. It wasn't large bundles of cash. It wasn't family heirlooms or jewellery or expensive sound systems or DVD players. It wasn't that. These are the kind of things that in the 27 years of break-ins were going missing. Food, magazines, shoes, jackets, hats, batteries from remote controls, razors, soap, books, cups, rope, matches, spray paint, towels, camping equipment, hammers, nails, and duct tape. These are the kind of things that had been disappearing, and I guess, in a way, it makes sense of the note that one resident, the one I started with, Catherine, it makes sense of the note that she left on the door, which said, please don't just break in and take things. Give me a list of what you need, and I will leave it on the doorstep. Now, Catherine's got no idea who that note, who's going to read that. She doesn't know who the hell's breaking into her house. Of course not. Nobody does. But I can sort of see the logic. Strange as it is, it might seem odd that you would be like, I'm just going to leave a note from a burglar on the door that says, don't bother breaking in, I'll just buy you what you need. But I can kind of see her logic slightly. If your house had been broken into 8 times, and those were the kind of things that were going missing, food out your fridge, matches out of your drawer, some spray paint out of your garage, you would be just going, these are the strangest, most random things for someone just to be taking. Just why doesn't this person just say what they need? And it saves the whole break-in, calling police, etc, etc. Police decide after a few years that they would search the wooded area, they would search the mountains which sit behind North Pond, that whole nature area, and they would do quite an extensive search. And they do, but they don't find anything. Not even really a vague sense of where any of the stolen things are going. Now the townspeople, I keep I keep saying townspeople as if I think they're out of some sort of Charles Dickens novel. They're not. You know what I mean? This is 2013. It's been going on since the late 80s, but actually at the point that I've come to the story, this is 2013, so there's really no need for me to be calling them townspeople as if they should all be walking around in some sort of Dickensian dress. Anyway, what they decide is you know what, we need to take matters into our own hands. So they decide that they have to do something, that they cannot live in fear anymore that someone is watching them. They're saying things like, my kids are scared all the time. My family, when we go to bed at night, we go to bed and it's never far from your mind the thought that when you wake up in the morning, all of your belongings might just not be there because someone might have come in the night and taken them. However, they search. The townspeople, and again, much like the police, they find nothing. Okay, let's pause on North Pond in 2013. And we'll go to the town of Albion in Maine. Not really that far from North Pond, maybe an hour away. Okay, here we have the Knight family. So that's knight as in the ones that dress in silver and have got the swords, not as in the Vincent van Gogh painting, Starry Starry Night, so with a K. So we have here a mother, a father, and 3 sons. Now the youngest is son Christopher. As a child, Christopher Thomas Knight is his full name, and he often is given his full name. I don't know why. What's this obsession with giving people their full name? Nah, just say your first and your second. I never use my middle names. I just think it's such a... Well, it's not that I don't use them. Obviously, I use them on documents and whatever. But I'd never introduce myself to someone and be like, hello, I'm Barry John Peter Henderson. Nice to meet you. I mean, why would you do that? Anyway, he goes a lot by Christopher Thomas Knight, this guy, and I'm just going to call him Christopher Knight because I can't be bothered with the Thomas. So, who is he? Well, when he was growing up, he was a really studious and intelligent young guy. He went to high school in the area. He got really, really good grades. He went on from high school to study IT. And those who knew Christopher, what they said about him is, he has got a good sense of humour. It could be quite funny, but he just didn't have any friends. He was a proper Billy No Mates. Really, is who he was. But I think that's how Christopher liked it. I actually think that's what he kind of wanted. He sort of, designed that for himself. So his family, well, they're a hard-working set of people. I get the impression, just from things I've read, things I've picked up, I think they were a very functional family. Were they a close family? No, I don't think so. Did they do a lot of things together? No, not really. I think they all just kind of independently just did their own sort of thing. Well, Christopher, he certainly just always did his own thing. I think this is really important in the story. He was a very, very private person. Even the closest people to him, like his brothers, they would say, no one really knows what Christopher is into. No one knows what he's really interested in or what he's about, or, just sort of struggle to get a bit of a sense of the guy. So many questions around Christopher. Is he gay? Is he straight? Is he a vegetarian? Is he a meat eater? None of these questions could be answered. Is he religious? Non-religious? Is he a McDonald's guy? A Burger King guy? Does he like early Madonna versus late Madonna? Who knows? No one knows answers to any. Well, this was the 80s, so actually maybe a lot of those things aren't really applicable. But anyway, you get what I'm saying. No one really knew Christopher. So photographs of him at the time will show kind of what he looked like was just I hate using this word, like, but just a geeky looking guy. But like a proper geek, not one of your hipster wanker wannabe geeks from now. I'm not talking about them. Like proper geek, like, you know, little glasses, messy hair, just really average looking, quiet, you know, just fine. Just like, you know, just like a normal guy. Now in 1986 he was 20 years old, and it was just your average day in the Knight family life. And Christopher gets into his car and he goes off for a drive. Now, he doesn't tell anyone where he's going, but that's no surprise because he never really ever did. He doesn't say bye to anyone as he leaves, his mum, his dad, his brothers. He just gets in his car and he goes. Christopher's family have no idea that he's leaving for good and he will never return. For Christopher's parents, this is the last time they will ever see their son. So driving in his car, he drives for a while, he stops, he sits in the car and he thinks, and then he gets out of the car. He just abandons it entirely and he starts to walk. Now when that night comes around and he doesn't come home, do you think his family were worried? No. When a day passes and he's not come home, are they worried then? No. They will say, well, we never knew what was going on with Christopher. He just did his own thing. No one knew. Within 2 weeks, Christopher hasn't returned home. And at that point, have the family done anything? Like, have they gone to the police? Have they said, our son, who's 20 years old, just drove away from the house one day and he's never come back? No, they don't. In fact, his family never report the disappearance of Christopher to anyone. I don't think that's normal. I think that's fucking weird. I do. I think that is really, really weird that you would... I mean, I know we talk all the time about going, oh, well, in the 80s it was different and people hitchhiked and they did all these things, but I still think if a 20-year-old guy gets in his car from his family home, 2 weeks later he's not back, you would kind of think maybe his family might do something about it. But no, they didn't. So when he abandoned that car in 1986, what did Christopher do? Well, he walked to the edge of the mountains and the forest area around North Pond. And it was here that Christopher Knight made the decision that this woodland area would become his new home. Back to North Pond in 2013, police are still searching for the mysterious, mythological mountain man, the stealthy Yeti. Now, do they have any clue who he is? No, not a clue. I mean, we do, but they don't. For 27 years, Christopher had lived in these woods, never sleeping indoors. As insane as that sounds, just wait until I describe what he had created in those years. Before we get there, let's just talk about the trap that police set in 2013. After so many residents complaining about the break-ins and constantly feeling watched and being terrified, police go, okay, this has been going on nearly 3 decades, let's do something about it. So a trap is set. Nearby to where lots and lots of the break-ins had been happening, there's an area, and I think it's about 6 different cabins, and it's called Pine Woods. You know, just your sort of holiday cabins. People would pop in, have a wee, cabin, holiday, whatever you have. But, so police, what they do is, they go to the people who own Pine Woods, and they say, do not let these cabins out for a full 2 weeks, please. We don't want anyone staying in them. And then what they do from there is they go to the sort of communal area of the cabins where there is a kitchen, and they fill the fridges with food. They station an officer nearby, and then what they're doing is basically they're trying to see, can they lure this mysterious thief out of hiding? Can they find this mysterious thief? Because if they've got a fridge full of food and it's in an area where there's no one around, chances are he's going to make an appearance. So it's the first night, the trap is set, and sure enough, at 3 a.m, a figure approaches the cabin with a rucksack. A male enters the kitchen. He opens the fridge, and he immediately starts to fill his rucksack with chicken. He finds crisps, there's some vegetables, there's some fruit, there's chocolate, there's coffee. He puts it all in his rucksack and he sneaks off into the dead of night. Now this was only phase 1. Police decide at this point they're not going to just try and catch this man on that first night, because what they know is if they can restock those fridges, he'll be back. If he's already gotten a pretty good lot from that fridge, he'll be back again to try once more. They're not rushing this, okay? Because this has gone on for so many years, they need to get this right. What's that? Slowly chase the monkey. That's what they're doing, okay? So the second night comes around, and what they've done this time is they've hidden a very small secret recording device behind one of the appliances in the kitchen. You know, like somewhere you'd never look, like, I bought a slow cooker about 3 years ago because I suddenly thought I was going to be the new Gordon Ramsay and I was going to make my way to MasterChef if I bought a slow cooker. Yeah, I used it once and my carrots were still hard as fuck, so I've never used it. But some sort of appliance that like sits about a kitchen that you never look at. Anyway, they hide a little surveillance thing behind it. And what that has within it is an alarm that as soon as someone triggers that by opening a door into it, the surveillance camera picks them up and an alarm is sent to the police. So again, it's the second night and it's 3 a.m. The mysterious figure appears, enters the kitchen in the cabin area. He raids the fridge, and as he does so, that silent alarm is triggered by the device. Within 2 minutes, 2 police officers burst through the door. They shine a torch into the face of the thief. Now here's what they're expecting. They, with no knowledge of who this person is, they're expecting some homeless, hairy, disgusting mountain man. They're expecting to find essentially, I think a Yeti is what they think they're going to find. But instead, the person standing in front of them is clean shaven, has got short, tidy hair, and is wearing clean clothes. So they're confused, because this is not the picture they thought they were going to find. They still force him to put his hands up and to say who he is. Now, he stutters. He stutters badly trying to get his name out. After 27 years of not talking to people, of not speaking out loud, Christopher Knight has the hardest time getting his name out. But eventually he is able to say Christopher Knight. He's arrested on the spot for trespassing. And after a few minutes of trying to get him to talk to police, but realising that he's really struggling with speech, rather than take him to jail, this is what they do. They don't take him to jail. They say, we believe you are the guy who's been breaking in to these properties for years and years and years. And what we'd like to do is, rather than take you straight to the police cell, we want you to show us where you've been living. And so he does. He complies, he goes along with it, he's like, okay, fine. So he takes them on the walk to where he's been living. Now, it's quite hard to find. It's a clearing within a whole load of big, massive trees and huge boulders. And it's not really visible. You would have to got seriously lost to stumble upon it. It's not the kind of place you would just be like, oh, I can see it from a distance. You couldn't. Christopher was very, very clever in the place that he picked. He knew it would be really hard for people to find this. So by the time police get there, they're like, what the actual fuck is this? Like, the place that he has created. He's spent 27 years in the same bit of the woods. He's built himself essentially a place to live. Not a home, he's not built a home, but he's built somewhere that he can exist. And police just really want to see what that is. Christopher is taken after this to a police cell and he's charged with breaking and entering. The night that he's arrested, I just find this so strange. The night that he's arrested, he's put into his little jail cell, given his blanket, and he lies down. This is the first time in nearly 3 decades that Christopher Knight has slept indoors. I just find that so bizarre. At this point, Christopher's committed over 1,000 break-ins and for years caused terror for the residents of North Pond. When he is interviewed by police, he won't really say much. He doesn't really say a great deal. His speech is a little bit static and he's sort of struggling to get the words out. But, you know, he can say a certain amount and it takes him a good couple of days to warm up to being able to talk. Police are still kind of looking at him like he's this, you know, he's the freak. He's the mountain man. He's the stealthy yeti, or whatever they called him earlier on. So while they're interviewing him, in the outside world, news is spreading fast. News is spreading like wildfire. People in the town, they're relieved. They're like, oh my god, it's over. Like, whoever this presence is, this thing that terrorises for years, it's gone. There's loads and loads and loads of images of him in his prison jumpsuit wearing his handcuffs, and they're popping up on news all over the place. And it's bigger than local news. Way bigger than local news. It starts to make national news because people cannot believe this story. They're like, how can someone have lived in the woods for nearly 3 decades, 27 years, living in the woods? How is it possible? What the fuck's going on here? So he's charged, and as I said, of course, this means that he is going to go to court. Now, charging him, this just sparks another, major debate. One of the residents who lives in North Pond says there was a point where you just couldn't go anywhere. You couldn't go into a bar, you couldn't go into a cafe, you couldn't walk down the bloody street without somebody wanting to talk about what should we do with Christopher? Like, what should happen with him? And I do think that's a really interesting question, because you then go, well, actually, yeah, what should happen? Yeah, of course he should be charged for the break-ins. But that aside, once he's done his time for that, what do you do then? Do you release him back into the woods? Do you make him live in society when he's clearly chosen it's where he doesn't want to live? That's a bit of a dilemma. That's a bit of a, what would you do in that situation? If you had the power to pick, what would you do with him at that moment? Police continue trying to interview Christopher, and they really have the most, important questions to ask him. They're asking, what led to this decision? And he can't really give an answer. It just says that at 20 years old, just something in him changed. And he just knew that he just had to go and live away from other people. They're asking, but how did you survive? The weather conditions in Maine can be brutal. The winters can be so freezing. The summers can be so hot. How did you survive it? And he just says, I just did. I just got through it. And also what police want to know, because of course they're being police and they're doing the right thing here. They're also going, Christopher, is there something that you're hiding? If we were to search the area, would we find something that you wouldn't want us to find? Would we find something sinister? Bodies? Human remains? And he says, no, you wouldn't. I'm not living in the woods because I've attacked someone or I've done these things. I just made a choice to live here. They ask, right, so you've not seen a doctor in 27 years? And he says, no, there's no need to. The only time you ever need to see a doctor is when you are infected by something, and you only get infected by other people. I didn't come into contact with other people, so that wouldn't be a problem for me. They ask him to detail the robberies, and he says, I would first choose a home, and I would watch it from the woods for days. I would make sure no one was going to be home, and I'd go in and I'd take what I need. They say, so in all these years, you've never had contact with anyone, not once, not during any of these robberies. You've never accidentally bumped into someone. Someone's never seen you. That's it. You've just never had human contact. And he says, yeah, I have, twice, but it's been very, very brief. He explains that a hiker had gotten lost one day, and when he was in his area in the woods, she walked by. He said the words, hi. She said hi back, and that was it. She walked away. And that was the first he'd seen someone in about 13 years. The other one after it is a little bit stranger. He talks about how a father who was out with his 2 young sons hiking accidentally came across Christopher's home in the woods, and he says he thinks this father was terrified for his life and terrified for the life of his 2 little boys. So they sat down, they had an exchange, and Christopher begged the father, the man, he said to him, please don't say anything to police. Tell no one that you found this home in the woods. Christopher says the man seemed so afraid that he would be harmed that he just very quickly agreed and said, okay, I will go from this forest now. These woods, I will never tell anyone that I saw you. But of course, here's the thing, right? Well, I know what I'm like. I'd be straight out of there going, oh my fucking God, guess what I just walked into? You're never going to believe it. That man maybe might have been a bit more subtle than me, but at some point that man is going to talk, isn't he? He is going to say, you're never going to guess what's bloody happened. There I was, out hiking last week, met a man who lives in the woods. Can you bloody believe it? All that does is it adds to this sort of folklore and the mystery that was happening around it all the time. So police, again, they're just back at this question. They're going, right, well, there's been 1,000 break-ins over the years, but should we imprison you? Should you just be let go and let back to live where you need to? And even if you do go to prison, when it comes to an end, what do we do with you then? Do we just send you out? I don't know, it's tricky. You can't go, right, I was thinking about this. You can't go from 27 years in the woods in complete isolation to, a 1-bedroom apartment. living somewhere. You can. It's just, I mean, well, you could, but surely the culture shock of that is just insane. I mean, he's not going to suddenly, snap into being like, oh, well, I better pop down the shops and get some melons and some spaghetti. I don't know what he's making, but it just, that sort of domesticated life, or that sort of, he's not going to exactly be like, oh my god, I'm so excited they've put Stranger Things 3 on Netflix, brilliant, I can't wait to watch it. What I mean? That's not going to happen if you've lived all that time in isolation. So the judge, in his case, the judge is very, very lenient, and she says, look, I'm going to give you 7 months for the robberies. And she says this, I'm going to insist that when you leave, what you do is you get a job. Where you choose to live is entirely up to you. If you want to go back to the woods, mate, go on yourself. Do what the fuck you want. I don't care. But what I want you to do is, I want you to get a job, right? I want you to try and give a little bit back to society. And what I'd like you to do is try and pay back some of the people who you stole things from over the years. I'm not saying thousands of pounds. I'm saying like maybe £2,000 worth of just money back to people. So you need to get out here and get a job. Now, Christopher is not thrilled by this prospect, but the reality is he's still a criminal. He's still broken the law. He's still living out with the law. Now, let's talk about his home in the woods. Police go to look exactly at where he had lived all these years, and believe me, this is quite the setup. Oh my god. Right, so basically, Christopher slept in a tent, and it's actually just your average, normal-sized tent. He'd fashioned this sort of like washing line. So he'd basically gotten some big like bits of wood, put these poles in the ground, and he'd created this like sort of washing line type thing around him for, washing his clothes and drying them in the sun. But what he also did was, when the weather got bad, he draped tarpaulins or tarps over those ropes around him, and that created a bit of a windshield for him. In his little area, there was a little sort of living room area that he'd created. He'd found an old chair somewhere. There was a sort of kitchen area where he would make all of the food that he was stealing from fridges. He had, over the years, become obsessed with the idea that someone might see him, so he needed to be more camouflaged. Now, as I said, you would really need to look for this place. I know a couple of people did stumble upon it, but they must have been really lost to have done that, because it took police like forever to try and find it. So what he did was, he got some like corrugated iron, and he sort of built around his little home area, the corrugated iron, he stole green spray paint from the garages of the people who lived in the area, and he spray painted everything green in the hope that that would camouflage him. He had empty containers, and he used these to collect like rainwater, and also drinking water would come out of that as well. There was like piles of books and piles of magazines. And these are all the things that residents were coming home and finding that they were missing. So there was, huge stacks of magazines. A lot of them. Playboy magazines. Alright, Christopher. Alright, mate. Know what you're up to. Imagine your Playboy magazine just disappeared. Imagine, because you don't really leave your Playboy magazine lying about, in the house. Not that I have a Playboy magazine, but you know what I mean. You wouldn't leave it kicking about your family dining room. Those are usually quite secret. He's had to go into somebody's house and work quite bloody hard to find those magazines. Do you know what I'm saying? This was a full-on domestic situation that he'd created. And every single bit of it was stolen over a 27-year period from the people who lived in that town. It was photographed. Locals tried to come and visit. People wanted to now desperately see where the crazy hermit man had lived all these years, but police, they put the yellow do not cross crime scene stuff around it to stop people getting in. Bit by bit, police began to dismantle Christopher's home. I think I'd be a bit livid. If police suddenly started dismantling it, I'd be like, oi, I've spent 27 years building this. I've got the perfect system going on here. Get your fucking hands off it. In prison, Christopher is having a really tough time. In an attempt to talk to other inmates, when he does make the effort, they just ridicule him because they say, you talk like a book, not like a normal person. After this, he just goes silent and he won't communicate with anyone. In prison, they try to show him lots of modern things that he might have missed. So they show him, like, what a phone looks like. not an old phone, I mean, it was the 80s that he walked out of his life. I'm sure he remembers a phone. However, they try and show him, like, current cellular mobile phones, and he's like, what the devil is this? I don't understand. They try to explain what the internet is. How would you even do that? I mean, come on. But they try to explain what the internet is, and to him it's just totally foreign. I mean, he doesn't know what they're talking about. So they show him the internet and he's like, what is this? Like, I don't understand what it... I mean, it must just be so strange if you don't know what that is. He doesn't know the powers that are out there, the things that it can do. He doesn't know he could have saved himself a lot of time on those Playboy magazines had he known the internet existed. In prison, Christopher will allow his two brothers to visit. They've come because the news that he's been living in the woods all these years has come out, and they just want to see him in the flesh. They're relieved. Relieved. However, I will say, have they been looking for him all these years? No, I don't think so. They haven't. However, they come to visit, but Christopher won't let his mum come to visit. Now, she's not seen her son in almost 30 years, but he says, no. I don't want her to see me like this. The press and journalists, they are trying so hard to get an interview with Christopher. And he only accepts one interview, and it's from an American man called Michael Finkel. And when Michael goes to interview him, he says Christopher is very, very reluctant to talk. And then he'll say Christopher is actually just quite rude sometimes. When asked about his family, he'll say, we were a stoic family. You just don't really talk about your feelings. The journalist says, how were you able for that length of time to stay out of sight of people? And he says, I watched them from a distance. I studied their comings and goings. I knew when they were home, and I knew when they would be out. I learned to take just a little from every house and not cause too much alarm. For years, I've observed from a distance these people coming and going, and that is how I got away with it for so long. Creepy vibes. Well, is it creepy vibes or is it actually survival? I don't know. You decide. You decide, let me know what you think. He does show like a little bit of remorse for the break-ins and for, the terror that he's caused in people. During the time that Michael Finkel was communicating with Christopher and him were exchanging letters. And I guess what's happening is Michael Finkel is doing what I suppose everyone wants to do and try to get to the bottom of it. However, Christopher is a little bit evasive. He never really gives straight, clear answers. He does say a couple of things that I think are quite interesting. So he replies to Michael and he says, I've replied to your letter because writing letters relieves the somewhat stress and boredom of my present situation in prison. My vocal and my verbal skills have become rusty and slow. In another letter, he continues to talk about what it feels like in jail. He says, you ask how I sleep. Well, the answer is little and uneasy. I am nearly always tired and nervous. While talking about his years of burglary, he says, I was a thief. I repeatedly stole over many years and I knew it was wrong. I felt guilty about it every time, yet I continued to do it. And then Michael asks him about some of the more, rough months in the woods. You know, when the weather would have been really bad, or when he was at his most sort of maybe lowest point, or really feeling the kind of choice he'd made to live there. Christopher writes, I tried to meditate as much as possible. I didn't meditate every day, every month, and every season. Just when death was near. Death in the form of too little food or too much cold. Then he writes this, I am alive and I'm sane. At least I think I'm sane. When I came out of the woods, they applied the label hermit to me. This is a strange idea. I have never thought of myself as a hermit. Then I got worried. With the label hermit comes the idea of being crazy. And I'm not crazy. He says, I suspect more damage has been done to my sanity in jail in months than years and decades in the woods. So they're exchanging letters back and forth, and Michael Finkel is thinking this is great, he's getting a real dialogue going, when all of a sudden the letters stop. Christopher just stops writing to him. He signs off his last letter, your friendly neighbourhood hermit, Christopher Knight. I mean, I've got questions about it, and I know you will have as well. The thing is, I know everyone likes a bit of solitude every now and then, but could you go that length of time without any communication with another human being? Would it actually just begin to drive you insane? Just thinking your own thoughts over and over and over and never being able, to get them out of your head, to speak them aloud. I don't know, maybe he was. Maybe he was talking to himself aloud a lot, I'm not sure. But I just think, there's so many questions around just that idea of, it's like, I suppose when you think about it, like putting people into solitude confinement in a prison is seen as a torture method, and this guy has actually chosen to do it to himself, and for a long time was pretty happy in that. I don't know, so many questions about it. Whilst he's in prison, he stops shaving. He just refuses to shave, as he says, this is the only way that I can understand the passage of time. I haven't had a working clock for years. I don't have a watch, so I don't know how time passes. My beard tells me how time is going. Okay. In prison, he reverts to just complete silence after a while. He stops talking. He feels like he's a bit of an animal backed into a corner. And he writes down on a piece of paper, silence is the only defence I have. Christopher's prison sentence comes to an end. And again, the judge is there to say, you have to gain some kind of employment. You have to try to make some amends to the residents for what you've put them through for 30 years. So he comes out of prison and he gets a job in a garage somewhere in Maine where someone won't know who he is. While in prison, his home in the woods is completely and utterly taken apart. Christopher never ever gets the chance to visit his old home, and instead he gets put into sheltered accommodation in Maine. His location and his identity, they're kept secret because of prying journalists and people wanting to know where he is. As far as we know, Christopher is still living in his sheltered apartment, alone. What Christopher's story brings up, I think, is the really interesting idea of solitude. That choice to be alone. I mean, he made a choice to cut himself off from the world. And yeah, okay, as I said, he should be, reprimanded for the years of stealing, the years of break-ins. But what the judge actually said, if we go back, is I don't think this guy's going to reoffend. I don't know that that's what he's going to do. And she also just said, I've got no problem if he wants to live in the woods. Let him live in the woods. Fine. But it just seems to me that society maybe doesn't have that same feeling. I think there's a pressure to make sure that once he'd been found, I read so many bloody different articles that are captured, found, hunted down. I mean, I've even used some of those words, even in the way that I've told this story. But again, all it does is it just adds up to making someone sound like a cornered animal. Christopher, when he was in prison, went through all of the tests for autism, for Asperger's syndrome, for, sort of any conditions, any sort of social conditions, anything that might make someone choose to just walk out of their life and live alone in the woods for 30 years, which to you and me might seem insane. To him, didn't really seem that insane. And now what's happened is he's been captured by society and he's being forced out of that. He's being told, no, you've done it wrong for the last 30 years. And he's now having to bloody readjust to what we think is normal life. Living in a 1-bedroom sheltered accommodation house in Maine. Well, maybe he wasn't built that way as a human being. Maybe that's just not what that was ever meant to be for him. If he was happy living in the woods, fucking let him live in the woods. I have no issue with that. And I think that's why I really like the judge in this case, because I think she was brilliant by going, you will pay back some of what you've taken, but also if you want to go back to that life, go back to it. Just don't reoffend. Just don't do that. By all means, get up and go to your job every day. If you want to come home every night and live in the fucking woods, do it. That's your choice. But I just think that's not the world we're living in. I think we live in a world where we have to go, no, he needs to be ripped out of that immediately. He needs to be absolutely put somewhere else where we think it's acceptable. Why? Why does he? There's been no real sightings of Christopher for a while. It's believed that he might have changed his appearance. It's never been reported if Christopher has ever actually made contact with his mother, who is now in her 80s. For the people of North Pond, they could breathe a sigh of relief. The creepy, watching figure was gone. And for the police, a sense of triumph. And also 27 years of reports of break-ins off their desk. But for Christopher Knight, he'd been hunted like an animal, and he's currently living a life that he didn't really choose. And so ends the story. Alright then. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you liked that story. It's a weird one. It's a very, very, very strange one. But yeah, I think it's interesting. I think there's a lot to think about in it. A lot to question. Alright, so, you know that I enjoy to do some usually when I'm doing the story, what I have is, I have some bits of paper near me that I've just got the odd notes here and there on them, just the odd little bits and pieces. But as I was kind of researching the story and looking at things, found myself doing a little sketch of what Christopher's home in the woods looked like. Now, I can do a lot of things in life. I can tell a story. That's one thing I can do. Draw. I'm not saying I'm an artist. I'm not, right? But I have managed to draw his home in the woods, and I think it looks pretty good. So I'm going to offer out a competition. I'm going to say this. The best or the most insightful or the funniest or whatever comment on this story on social media this week, be that Facebook, be that Twitter, be that Instagram, be that in an email, whatever, okay? The best comment, I'm going to pop my drawing that I have lovingly drawn into an envelope and send it to you. I'm going to wing it to you wherever you are in the world. Wherever you're listening, I'll send it to you, okay? And don't get me wrong, it's just a sheet of A4 pencil drawing, but I'm pretty sure that when you see it, what you might want to do is take down all the artwork in your house and just have this as the central focus, because it's pretty good. It's got bloody stick men involved, for God's sake. It's great. Yeah, so comment and I'll pick someone who's worthy of my shit drawing. At which point you'll be like, can I send it back, Barry, because it's really bad and I don't want it. Anyway, I'm going to go. But before I do, I'm just going to say you can get me on all of those places. You can. I say it all the time. Join the Facebook group. It's absolutely incredible. Yeah, what else? No, that's it, really. So Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Extraordinary Stories Podcast. Tell your friends. Tell your family. Tell your neighbours. Tell your dog. Okay? Goodbye.
It didn't affect me really one way or the other. I would imagine from the look on his face, let's get it on, let's do it, let's get it over. Let's get it on. Let's do it. Let's get it over.